let's head to Morocco. The country is undertaking a raft of reforms to develop its tourism industry into Africa's leading destination in the next 5 years. That's according to Tourism Secretary Lamia Boutaleb. Now, he's addressed international investors and Moroccan business conglomerates at the Wharton Club for Africa Forum, which is taking place in Marrakech. Now, Boutaleb says the government has liberalized its aviation sector and is developing infrastructure. Tourist arrivals in the country have increased to 11 million annually from about 5 million in 2015. And the minister says tourism has become the country's top forex earner.
We are working on setting up funds to have subsidies for tourism. We are working on bad debt funds to take bad debts from banks to help better finance this sector. And so for us, this is very important. And why are we doing that? Not just because tourism is nice, but it is our first sector. It contributes 7% to GDP in Morocco. It employs more than 2.5 million people in Morocco directly and indirectly. And it is our first foreign exchange reserves source is tourism. So it is the most inclusive sector. So we are working on that, also quality, improving the quality of the experience, also training.
Well, let's get more on what's taking place at that summit. CGTN's Rama Nyang now joins us from Marrakech with more on this. Rama, welcome to the show. Now, we know that a lack of capital is a huge issue. It's often been cited as a big concern for governments, for SMEs. However, we do know that pension funds on the continent are sitting on billions of dollars of cash, which is desperately needed for investments in sectors such as infrastructure. So exactly how can pension funds on the continent unlock value from the cash they have?
Indeed, that was one of the interesting topics of debate at this year's event, in fact, just a couple of hours ago. To give you a simple example, Nigeria, for example, you're looking at over $30 billion worth of cash that's being held in fairly safe, fairly conservative assets, treasury bills, treasury bonds, fairly listed equities, that sort of thing. And understandably, there's a fairly good reason why. There are very strict rules about what sort of asset classes pension funds can put cash into. Understandably, because this, after all, is other people's money. They need it for their retirement, so you don't want to put that capital at risk. But increasingly, what we are hearing from a lot of the pension funds here, and Uganda was represented, Nigeria was represented, Seychelles was represented as well. What you're hearing from them is that they're saying, look, we do need to diversify the sort of assets we actually are putting our money in. Seychelles, for example, has over 40% of its assets held in real estate. Kenya, for example, has loosened its regulations not too long ago, about 3 or 4 years ago, to actually allow pension funds to put money into private equity and venture capital as well. Here's the thing, though, FDI flows into the continent are still a very, very tricky thing to pull off. Countries desperately need, as you mentioned, money for infrastructure, roads, rail, water, you name it. But ultimately, they're not getting a lot of it. Here's the example of how Egypt is faring in its race for FDI.
From the 2011 uprising to 2014, average foreign direct investments didn't exceed $2 billion, with many closing shop and leaving the country. Since then, retaining security, constructing the new Suez Canal and adopting a rigorous economic reform plan had their positive effect. And the new investment law has been commended by most experts.
I think the most important item is the golden license, which means once you have a license from one source, which is the Prime Minister's office. Unfortunately, this license is available only for big investors. Also, the government says that they will make things easy for the investor. The paperwork, the cycles have been reduced supposedly to like 7 days to issue or you start your business. Well, this is good.
For the last 3 years, annual FDIs have been steadily rising to exceed $8 billion in 2017. Most of the capital is pouring into the oil and gas, the real estate and the tourism sectors. They are led by European and Arab Gulf investors. But some experts believe there should be focus on other sectors as well.
we have to be selective about the kind of investments. We need investments in sectors that are labor intensive, such as manufacturing, and specifically electronic manufacturing, car industry, not services, because this is easy. And at any sign of problems, the service investments, they will leave. Manufacturing, on the other hand, they will stay with you. What we call here is sustainable development.
And one country that could achieve this target is China. Out of its 1,300 companies investing $5 billion in Egypt, over 800 companies are in the manufacturing and technology sectors. The rest are in real estate and services. And the numbers look promising going into 2018. The government expects FDIs to reach $10 billion next year, and most of it is diversified between the industrial sector, especially at the new Suez Canal industrial zone, in addition to the agriculture and energy projects. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.